Okay, so this is Adam House, currently an undergraduate college student. Have been a pre-law major, but recently switched from political science concentration to a sociology concentration with more my minors in political science and history now. I am technically a senior at this point, although the classes that I'm taking, I've got enough coursework uh, that I've still got 3 more semesters to go to graduate, including this semester, this being fall of 2025. I'm in this, is it a three? Yeah, it's a 3,000 level course, topics in global history. The topic is resisting fascism. So, from a global perspective, a history of resistance to fascism. Um, so, this video is basically just going to be a diary. I intend to share it with other people right now, but it's not really for the purpose of um, other people's consumption as it is just for me kind of uh, thinking about the course. It's as I go through it and sharing some highlights. So as I go through the course, we meet one time a week throughout the fall semester 2025. We meet once a week for 3 hours per class. So my intention through this semester is to do a video, at least I plan to do one of these a week, but if it ends up being a little more or less, we'll see. I reserve the right to change how I want to format it before it's all done. But right now, my intention is to go like one per week. And what I'm not going to do here is reteach the class that I've just been to. And I'm not really worried about trying to present that. In fact, so that I don't share anything that I shouldn't share as an ethical student. I'm not trying to reteach the class, share all the same information, course materials, and or test and quiz answers, things like that's not what this is about. This is just about a personal diary that I am making public, just kind of organizing and thinking through some of my own thoughts and research as I move along. And I do think this is a timely subject. I do think it's relevant to the moment. So if you get something out of it, if you decide to watch, as disorganized as this is probably going to be, if you can get something out of it, great. If not, it doesn't hurt my feelings that you don't watch my video because it's not really about you. So anyway, so I had my first class today of this 3,000 level resisting fascism college course. And I would say first of all, what we did today was basically a syllabus introduction, professor introduction, syllabus, and then just kind of a break the ice type of thing. And let's visit the topic and talk about what we know about it before we really dig in. That's kind of what I got from class today. And then we did start to dig in a little bit, putting our toes in some of this material that we're going to get to throughout the semester. This class actually has more books than any college class I've ever taken before. There are 6 required texts for this class that I had to purchase. And so first thing I want to do is give you the materials that that I'm using right now, that I'm going to refer to probably throughout this whole process. And so Fascism, a very short introduction by Kevin Pasmore. Next title, A Moment of War, a memoir of the Spanish Civil War by Laurie Lee. Number 3, Diary of a Man in Despair by Friedrich Reck. 4, The 43 Group, Battling with Mosley's Black Shirts by Morris Beckman. Outwitting the Gestapo by Lucy Aubrac, and Incident at Vichy by Arthur Miller. And then there are other additional readings that I'll be getting, and I may or may not share some of those, or all of those, or none of those. We'll see. So, one of the things that we did today was try to define fascism. Now, there's going to be a lot of stuff that I'm going to probably talk about on here that I'm going to know a lot more about already coming into the course, and I'm probably not going to get off too far into the weeds about things that I've already researched before I came to this class. I'm probably just going to stick more to the class material, although I'm sure that I will draw upon all of my many, many years of delving into the subject of forms of governments and forms of political philosophies, and especially when it comes to political movements and governments around in the United States and around the world throughout history. So anyway, one of the things we tried to do today was define fascism. And I've known before that there is this kind of thing among people who study fascism that it is difficult to define. And so today, this college course just affirmed what I thought I already knew, that that fascism is kind of hard to nail down, and and there are different ways to approach this. And one way that I have approached it in the past, and we seem to follow somewhat of a similar model today, was bring in everything that you know and try to come up with a concise definition as you can. And so apparently, even the experts, the scholars, the academics who study fascism, have a difficult time agreeing on a particular definition. So one way to come at this is, widely recognized as the father of fascism is the old Italian dictator Benito Mussolini. Mussolini said something to the effect of fascism is the merger of state and corporate power. So there's the person who is credited with creating fascism or bringing it about, at least for the first time, to real power. Of course, there's even academic debates about these things. Okay, but in general, this is to give us some kind of foundation, some kind of structure to start thinking about this and talking about this. Nietzsche said something about the will to power, and Nietzsche may or may not have a whole lot to do with fascism, but it relates at least enough that sometimes it's worth bringing up in a conversation about fascism. You're talking about things like the survival of the fittest, and trying to apply that in a racial sense, and in a competition of the races, and there being a hierarchy of races, and so these are the types of things. The will to power is about using whatever means to get to the power that you want, and probably would go so far as to say the law be damned, or if you're talking about specific people who get into specific offices of power, they're just able to overrule constitutional law or whatever it is, with violence and kind of underhanded things. So anyway, already starting to get off too far into the weeds. So we can look at what the father of fascism said. We can look at his first fascist, the government that he set up in Italy. And then soon thereafter, of course, you get other fascist leaders that come to power. The most classic one everybody knows is Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany and the Third Reich. So So that's another thing that we can do is look at examples of when fascism has come to power before, governments that are commonly agreed upon as this was a fascist government. Um, One way you could say this is that all Nazis are fascists, but not all fascists are Nazis, kind of thing. So there's a lot of different types of fascists. Nazis are a type of fascist. So the German Third Reich is it's a Nazi empire, but that's a type of fascism. Italian fascism was its own different flavor of sorts, and all the other fascist governments that's followed since then. Um, but they all kind of have a unique flavor as well. But that is another way that we can start to understand what is fascism. Uh, and the next thing would be looking at those elements, the recipe, as it were. What are they characterized by, and some of the things that we come up with. And this is it's a little convoluted, but you have to start having some kind of framework. So what are some of the things that the fascist governments tend to have in common throughout history? What are some of the most common traits of a majority of these fascist governments that we can look at throughout history? And there's things like jingoism, a fierce militaristic nationalism, um, state violence, a tendency towards cult of personality and autocracy. Uh, there's an open hostility to democracy and the idea that democracy doesn't really deliver, and that because of its failures, that it should be replaced. Typically within fascism, that means being replaced by this charismatic cult leader, whoever it is. So, it's the will to power instead of the rule of law. So in the United States, it would be something like the rule of law under the United States Constitution starts to get overruled by a central leader, or even a small group of elite like an oligarchy. But you're probably looking at some form of autocracy, monarchy, dictatorship. Um, and so there's other elements that are common to these fascist governments. They tend to have a nativist element. They tend to engage in a lot of xenophobia, demagoguery, and impassioned rhetoric. They tend to rally around a race and or religion, and traditionalism within that race and that religion. But as much as it's about being traditional and like not being progressive, it's also about looking at the past, typically looking at some mythical past and saying that we need to go back to that. Not only do we want to not go further from where we are now, we want to go backwards, is one way that you could put that. So it tends to be a populist movement, and tends to be reactionary in nature. So reactionary populism, right-wing reactionary populism, is kind of another common major element of fascism. So let's see, what else do I want to talk about today? As a side note, a couple of documentaries and or movies you might be interested in. The Silence of the Sea, which I have not watched yet, and Anthropoid, which I remember that I have watched, but I don't remember much about it. I think it's been a long time, probably since I've seen it. And The Endless Trench, which I actually watched after school tonight because I had a long day at school, and I needed to relax and not read or anything for a little while, and so I watched a movie related to the course material that was a movie that was recommended in class. So let's see, what else? Yeah, okay, so just a little bit more about what is fascism. Or do we want to get into this or not? I think maybe talk about, because actually the focus of this course is supposed to be resistance to fascism. Of course, you can't get to the resistance part until you've kind of gone through what is fascism and this, that, and the other. So kind of have to have an understanding of what it is you want to resist. So that's the hope, is that throughout this semester, I will obtain an even better understanding of fascism. I think I have a much better understanding of fascism than the average person already, but that's because it's been a personal interest among the other, communism, theocracy, and other forms of government, especially abusive governments, tyranny, that I've been interested in studying throughout my entire life. So, anyway, okay. So, resisting fascism, there are different types of resistance to fascism. But again, this is not about me going through everything that my professor went through today. It's not my intention to just reteach his material. This is about me just thinking about it. But so what I would say is, one of the things that I was given today was to think about the ways that we resist fascism throughout history, that people have resisted fascism throughout history, and think about if you can categorize those different types of resistance, how many different categories would you come up with, and what would those categories be? So, and that's something we covered today a bit as well. And that will be it for week 1 for my personal diary of a 3,000 level global history resisting fascism undergraduate course at the college level. I will see you for week 2 of fascism next week. Thanks. Oh, and fuck Trump and fuck ICE.